Hola, hola guys, welcome back to my channel. Hi, my name is Roxanne. If this is your first time here, then welcome. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit more about How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accents by Julia Alvarez. I didn't think I was going to do a review on this, but then I was looking through my notes that I took while I was reading it, and I realized that there were a couple of things that I didn't touch on during the wrap-up that I sort of wanted to delve a little bit more into this. It probably won't be very long of a discussion or review, but still I wanted to talk about them because I felt that they were important points that the book made. So yeah, let's get right into it. In case you haven't watched my wrap-up for January, this book is about, it is a fictionalized sort of autobiographical book written by Julia Alvarez about the things that happened inspired by the things that happened to her and her family, including her sisters, when they moved from the Dominican Republic and immigrated into the United States. It's told in reverse chronological order, so we start with the most recent sort of manifestation of their lives and then go backwards to see how we got to where she is in the beginning of the book. And it is really beautifully written. It is very subtle in the way that she writes and in the points that she's trying to make about the way that life is for immigrants, the way that life is when you go back to your home country, the way that life is when you first move to the United States, not knowing the culture or the language or anything like that. So she talks about all of these things, and she touches on all of them in very subtle ways, sort of while telling you the stories of her and her parents and her sisters. And the things that really sort of most impacted me were the things that she would mention very briefly and again very subtly about the inner workings of a Caribbean Latinx family, and the things that I personally was able to relate to because I've seen them in my family. And yeah, I just thought that was really interesting. So I'm gonna just talk a little bit more about those. So when we first are introduced to Yolanda, which is the oldest sister and presumably Julia herself, she has gone back to the Dominican Republic and her intentions are to stay long-term, maybe stay forever. We see how she interacts with the family that essentially they left there when they moved to the United States, and they're very interesting interactions, and there are some that I could really relate to because whenever I go back to Puerto Rico to visit my family, I encounter a lot of these, and it is somewhat of a feeling of sometimes being like an outsider in your own nation. And that can be for a multitude of reasons. You can have become very accustomed to the way that you live in the United States. I have a lot of privileges lifestyle-wise here that maybe my family back in the island doesn't. I am much more familiar with the internet, and I have smartphones, and I have all of this technology, and I do all of these things that my family, when I go back, who are from the mountains and are still sort of getting used to things like the internet and using smartphones and like video messaging, those are all things that are still a little bit foreign to them. Obviously not to everyone in the island. That's not the point that I'm trying to make here, but she sort of experienced that with her family, where when she goes back, there are things she wants to explore the island by herself, and they're like, oh no, you shouldn't do that. And she's like, why not? I can do that back in the United States. And there are other little subtle interactions, such as when she forgets the word for guayaba, which is essentially guava, so she keeps calling it guava, and they're like, guayaba? And that's happened to me so many times where you just forget a word or something, and that is a lot of times seen as an affront to family members back on the island, because it's almost like, did you forget where you came from? Did you forget your language? How is that so? These are the people that you came from. And so sometimes there's that sort of feeling of being an outsider within your own family, and obviously that you overcome that with time, but that can sometimes be a little bit disheartening when you're very excited to be back home. There's also this feeling of you appreciate things from back home that the people who are there might take for granted. So she is just really, really craving some guavas, and her family's like, why? They're just fruit. They're just like guava. And we have these little fruits in Puerto Rico called quenepas that I love, and that you can find them here in Spanish markets, or in like Latino markets, but they're not as good. They're not as sweet. They don't taste like they do back on the island. And my mom is convinced that the plátanos are not the same and all of that. And so, but that a lot of that is taken for granted by your family when you go back. And so they look at you a little bit weird, like, why are you so excited about this fruit? So those are some of the things that she explores in the first chapter when we're introduced to the first character of Yolanda and her family. Another thing is the way that your family reacts to you because of the perception. And I think I talked about this a little bit in my wrap up. When you move to the United States, especially and I'm speaking from my own personal experience here and some of the things that I saw reflected in the book, from a Caribbean island, there is this perception that your family has of what life in the United States is. And that could be that they think you're rich, or that you have completely forgotten your roots, or that you're super liberal now, which could be true, especially for me. I've become super liberal, but side note, that doesn't matter. Though they react to you in that way when you go back. And so sometimes you'll get little snide comments, sometimes you will feel a little bit of tension, and that could be, and it doesn't have to be negative. It could be positive. It could be like, oh, what did you do? Tell us about your life, because they think it's this big extravagant thing sometimes, and you have to overcome that because you might be treated because they are reacting to the way that they perceive your life to have been in the United States, whether that's a reality for you or not. You could have been just as poor in the United States as you were back on the island, but sometimes family doesn't always get that. And so those are all themes that were explored, and familial dynamics that were explored that I really, really enjoyed, and that gave depth to the story and to the characters and to the lifestyle that she's trying to portray in the book. This book is very, I wouldn't say it's bilingual because it's much more in English than it is in Spanish, but there are a lot of phrases or words that are interspersed in the story that are in Spanish, and I think that was a really wonderful way of immersing you into the culture and really creating a more atmospheric story by doing so, because you are seeing a very big part of the culture that she's trying to explore, which is the language, obviously. And so I thought that was really great, and I love that she did that. And it's not always explained, like it doesn't just because sometimes it is like she'll say guava and her family will be like guayaba. That's very obviously what that means in Spanish and in English, but it's not always done. And so you are able to really sort of immerse yourself a little bit more in the culture and in the family, and I think that was done really well, and I think it added a little bit more to the story. Something very important that again was very subtly done, none of the things that she does I felt were preachy, but they're done really, really well, and they still make an impact, is she talked a little bit about, just throughout the interactions that she might have had with her the sisters might have had with the fathers or with other members of the family, is the anti-blackness that is found within Latinx cultures. And there are these concepts of fixing the race, despite the fact that being Latino is not a race. There are white Latinos, there are black Latinos, there are Asian Latinos. So it is this weird thing that doesn't really exist, but that still has a very deep impact on families. And there is a weird sort of interactions that happen if you are lighter skin and you maybe want to date someone who's darker skin, and that's explored. She sort of weaves it really wonderfully into the story, where there are a lot of people that don't know that this goes on in the Hispanic or the Latinx cultures, but she does that really well, where she makes you aware that it is a problem and that it is present even today in very modern Latinx cultures. And so I thought that was so wonderful, because I don't think it's explored nearly enough in this sort of colorism thing that goes on. And so when I saw that, I was very excited, because again, I really don't think that it's explored enough in literature or in sort of media in general. One of the sisters, Sophia, has a son. She marries a German white man and has a son, and so they consider that good blood, and they consider the lighter skinned, lighter eyed sister to be the pretty one and the fortunate one. And that's very much the case in a lot of our families, and that's something that we have to get past, obviously. But I really thought that was wonderful that was implemented into the story. You get a lot of the machismo. I mean, that's something that's definitely explored a lot more than the anti-blackness, but I think we don't do enough to sort of deal with it and fix it. And so that was explored in the story as well, the way that the father is towards the daughter, or the way that cousins are, male cousins are to female cousins, and siblings. If you're a guy, you're thought to have sort of the last word, even if you're just my cousin. Why do you get more of a say than I do just because you're a man? And that's, you know, that's machismo in its most sort of in its essence. And that's explored a lot throughout all of the women's interaction with the men. And I thought that was great as well, because though, like I said, that's a lot more common of a phenomena in media, in the way that we explore it, it's definitely still very much a reality for us, and we don't do enough about it. And I always say machismo kills, because it does. So I'm always very excited when I see that explored in books, because you definitely see the negative impacts in the lives of the women and in their interactions with men when they take on that sort of machista like level to them. And so you can definitely tell that she's very much against it, and so she's trying to give you a realistic portrayal of how it weaves into the lives of Latinx families. Her writing is beautiful. I think her use of metaphor is great. I think it's just a very sort of flowy, beautiful writing. It's very atmospheric at times, and it really immerses you in the culture. So I really enjoyed her writing. I can't wait to read her other book. I think she might have some poems as well, but I could be wrong about that. So yeah, those are some of the things that I really enjoyed about the book. Hopefully you guys might be tempted to pick it up. If you've already read it, please let me know what you think. Let me know if you think that there are any other sort of similar books that I might enjoy based on the things that I enjoyed about this book. Thank you guys so much for watching and hearing me sort of ramble on as I do with my book reviews. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys.